Thank you, Carol. Beautiful. Good morning, my people. It's just so good to see all of you. It's been a couple weeks, so it's really good to be home here in Riverside and home with all of you and starting a brand new year together, starting 2019 together. We are at the forefront. We have the opportunity for, like I mentioned earlier, for new and wonderful and glorious things. And what I know is that this community, as we move into 2019, expands and grows and strengthens and flourishes and prospers. Well, I know it, but do you? Okay. Frank, are they awake? Thank you. So this year, we have a fabulous opportunity here, and I see some of you already have it, and so I'm going to hold on to my copy as well. But this year, we have the fabulous opportunity. This year, if you look at your Connect magazine, and I want to direct your attention to this wonderful creation was put together by our very own Jeannie Kataoka, so thank you. So this is one of those new and lovely, fabulous things that we have this year. And so this copy of this one, this issue is for January, February. So hold on to it. You will not be receiving it next week, okay? And if you don't get a copy, or if you haven't gotten a copy, then you get to go see Casey. There's Casey over there. In the bookstore where we'll have some extra copies available for you. But in here it tells you everything that's coming up in January and February. So all the big stuff is in here. And also what's in here you'll find is that our 2019 theme for the year is spirituality in action. Spirituality in action. That means we're not just going to sit here in the little pews and contemplate our navels. Pick lint out of your belly button. Ew. So it's about taking action this year. Spirituality in action. And the spirituality in action is based upon the 10 prophetic justice principles, which you will find on page 4 of your Connect magazine. And so each month we'll be exploring one of the prophetic justice principles there in alignment with science of mind principles. But first, we've got to talk about science of mind principles. So that's what we're doing here in January. So in January, we're learning about learning and embodying science of mind principles. We're going back to the basics, if you will. So what does that mean by going back to the basics is we look at the science of mind text. We look at the book that Ernest Holmes wrote. Ernest Holmes is the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living, or the organization that became Centers for Spiritual Living. And he wrote a text called The Science of Mind. And so what we do is in January is we are looking at the first 4 chapters of The Science of Mind. Well, it's the first 4 chapters of the introduction of The Science of Mind, because later on in The Science of Mind, you'll see the chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4 again. So these are the Roman numeral first 4 chapters of The Science of Mind. That's what we're looking at. So this has all kinds of yummy, delicious information in it for you. So keep this available. Don't, I wouldn't necessarily say keep it in the bathroom. It's not quite bathroom reading. Unless you want to memorize it, it'll go pretty quickly. But make sure you have that easily and readily available to you. So, yeah, if they read it, it's all that matters, right? Right? It doesn't matter where you read it as long as you're reading it. So if we're going to look at science of mind principles, science of mind, what is that? Right? So why don't we look at that first? Shall we start there? So let's start at the very beginning. So science of mind, if we look at science, what is science? Science is an applied study. It's a practical study. So it is a study, if you will, that is very practical. We use applications to demonstrate knowledge, to test theories, to experiment, and then we arrive at a series of conclusions. So science is something where we actively participate in the study of, okay? Mind, the mind. Ooh. What is the mind? Right? Where is the mind? What is the mind? If you were to cut us open and try and search for the mind, you're not going to find the mind. What the mind is the mind is consciousness. Consciousness is the mind. So the science of mind is, if you want to look at it from a broader perspective, or perhaps a different perspective, or a more palatable perspective, it is the study, the applied study, the practical study of consciousness. Doesn't that sound good? It's the applied or practical study of consciousness. And so that's what we're looking at today, and that's what we're looking at this month, and that's what it is that we do here, and what we practice here is we practice the applied study of consciousness. That's what we're about here at Centers for Spiritual Living and here at Riverside Community Center for Spiritual Living. It's about studying the applicable or practical studying of consciousness. So what is consciousness? Consciousness is all there is. There's nothing else but consciousness. So what is consciousness? Consciousness is you, it's me, it's the chair you're seated on, it's the water bottle, it's your eyeglasses, it's all your friends and neighbors seated around you. It's the piano, it's the music, it's the idea, it's the visible and the invisible, material and immaterial, matter and dark matter, matter and space. It is energy, it is life, it is love, it is joy, it is peace, it is harmony, it is abundance. And it is all that there is. So the way consciousness creates, consciousness is the first cause. It is the divine creator, if you will. So consciousness is all that there is, and the way consciousness creates is consciousness creates by contemplating its own nature. And what did I say its own nature is? I just listed a whole bunch of them for you. Love, peace, harmony, joy, good, abundance, balance, divine right order, divine right action. This is what consciousness is, and so this is what consciousness contemplates. And through its own contemplation, it creates. The consciousness creates through its own contemplation. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with consciousness, and the Word was consciousness, and that which consciousness did not create was never ever created. And that which consciousness did create is absolutely everything, and so it is good and very good. It cannot be anything but good. It cannot be anything unlike itself. So consciousness is good. Consciousness is, if you want to use the word, God. Consciousness is spirit. Consciousness is the totality of everything. And therefore, consciousness has to be who? You and me. We are individualized expressions of consciousness itself because everything is consciousness. So therefore, you are consciousness, I am consciousness, we are all consciousness. Now, whether we're consciously awake or not is a different story. But it's all consciousness. And if consciousness creates and we are consciousness ourselves, then we are also creative and creators. We are co-creators with consciousness, using our individualized expression of consciousness in order to create and manifest and bring forth good in our lives. But how much good can we have? As much as we can accept, as much as our mind, our individualized mind, can conceive. But more than that is as much as we can accept, as much as we're willing to accept, as much as we're willing to receive. Because if I'm holding out a fist, how much water am I going to be able to catch in my fist? If I cup my hand, or I cup my hands, right, how much am I able to receive? A lot more, right? So it's a matter of what it is that we allow ourselves and what we are willing to receive and what we're receptive to. And that's through our own individualized expression of our own consciousness, which is part of the whole consciousness. The mind, if you will, has two parts: the subjective mind and the objective mind. The subjective mind is that which creates. It's the law, if you will, right? It's that creative medium that knows how to create, that brings forth all of creation. It knows what to create. It knows how to create it. But it is the objective mind that plants the seed. It's the conscious mind that plants the idea, that plants the thought into that creative medium. So the objective mind directs the subjective mind. So we get to use this because we're the microcosm of the macrocosm. Our objective mind can direct, we can use our objective mind to direct our subjective mind. And what is the subjective mind that we're using? It's not our own individual subjective mind, it's the collective subjective mind. Mind-blowing? So another way of saying it is that I get to choose which seeds I'm going to plant in my garden, which seeds I'm going to plant in my soil. I get to choose that. And then the soil does its thing and brings forth the plants, whether they're tomato plants or cantaloupes or orange trees or what have you. The garden, the soil, is going to bring forth that which I chose to plant. Right? So I'm objectively, consciously using the medium of using the subjective mind and directing it to produce for me that which I've planted. So it is our own realities, or the way Spirit moves for us, the way the subjective mind creates for us, is based on the form that we give it. And it's the form of our thought that gives that. So the tool that we use when we are talking about consciousness, the tool is our thoughts. Our thought is the tool that we are using. Because if we're not using it, we're just studying about consciousness. If all we're doing is studying about consciousness, it's like, well, you know, consciousness is all there is. Isn't that great? Consciousness is all there is. I know that consciousness is all that there is, and, you know, I know that it can work for me, and I know that it is back of all of creation. It's back of you. It's back of the birds. It's back of the trees. I know all that, right? But if I'm not using it, then I don't really have an understanding of it. And why wouldn't I use this principle? Mind is a principle the same way that electricity is a principle, right? So we can talk about electricity, right? Electricity is everywhere. Lightning is electricity in the air. Electricity is accessible to all of us here in this room, right? It's accessible. We can do whatever we want to do with electricity. It's cool. We can use it. Well, we're still talking about it. But if we don't actually go over and flip the switch and actually use it for something, then all we're doing is we're just talking about electricity. We're not using it. We're not doing anything with it. So what we have is the opportunity to use our mind, use our thoughts in the same way. If we're just sitting here listening, which is nice, I'm glad you're all here, right? But if we're just going to sit here and listen, and we're not going to apply anything, and we're not going to try anything, and we're not going to experiment with anything, then we're really not practicing the science or the study, the applied study of consciousness. We're just listening. We're just passive. And that's not spirituality in action. Because it's okay to be conscious of something, but if we really want to experience something, we have to be actively conscious of something. Meaning that we get to treat, or we get to pray, and we get to move our feet, right? Faith without works is dead. Or faith without works isn't even faith. So, the invitation then is to take something that is going on in your life, just one thing. You don't need to try to clean up everything at the moment. I mean, if your life is full, or your house is full, if we're going to declutter, you start with one room. You don't okay, boom, and blow up the house, right? It doesn't work that way, right? Because then you've destroyed the house too. So you want to start where you're at. So just take one thing. And what we know and what we do here with our thought is that we direct our thought is that we take whatever the condition is and we resolve it to thought. Okay, we have this condition happening. There's this thing that's happening. There's this thing in my life that I would like to experience change around. So we have the opportunity to take it to thought. What am I thinking about this thing? What energy am I giving to it? What power have I assigned to it? What do I believe about it? What is my belief behind it? What is my belief around it? What is my belief about it? What am I thinking about it? What words am I using to perpetuate this thing in my life? How am I feeding it? What food am I giving it? So once we realize that we are feeding it, that we're assigning power to it, or we're giving our power away to it, then we have the opportunity to empower ourselves to take it back. We can empower ourselves to use our thought to change our experience. Ernest Holmes was actually the first one to say, change your thinking, change your life. Not Tony Robbins, and not Jeff Goldblum with, apartments.com, change your apartment, change your life, or not that, though that can change your life too, right? But it's when we have the opportunity to change how we're thinking about something, how we're approaching something, how we're showing up to something. We have the ability to use the law of cause and effect to experience a difference in our lives. So what is it that you want to experience? What is it that you're currently experiencing, and what would you like to experience differently? The way to go about doing that is, have a new thought. And for those of you who know that Science of Mind, or Centers for Spiritual Living and Unity, are part of the New Thought movement, right? So our denomination, if you will, is called New Thought. Where does that come from? We have the opportunity to have a new thought to change our life, to change our reality. Because what we're doing is we're using the subjective mind we're planting a seed into that subjective mind, and we know that it is returned to us full. And it's done unto us as we believe, right? Spirit can only do for you what it can do through you. So are you open and available for Spirit to move through you? Right? It's kind of like the prodigal son. We sometimes forget. We go off into the far land, and we hang out there, and we slop the pigs, right? And woe is me. And what is the story of the prodigal son saying there is that we're out in the far land. We have separated ourselves from our true nature of who we truly are, who we know ourselves to be, who we've come into this life to be, what we've come into this life to be. We've forgotten, we've fallen asleep, or we're ignorant of it. And so what does the prodigal son ultimately do? He turns and he goes back home, right? He turns toward home. Same thing for us. When we forget that Spirit is all that there is and that is who we are, and we forget it and we're like floundering over here, suffering, the minute we turn toward Spirit, Spirit turns toward us. Spirit moves toward us. I forget which of the Sufi mystics, and I forget how many steps, because there's many different ones, but take one step toward Spirit, and Spirit takes 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000 steps toward you. It's a matter of us choosing to turn, to return to Spirit, to return to the truth, to begin to understand the truth again, to go back to the who of who we are, to live in conscious union with and as the one. And when we're living in conscious union with the one, or as the one, we align ourselves with that, then all that I have is thine. And what is it that we can accept? As much as we can accept is as much as we can have. It's up to us to accept the gifts. Because when we talk about Spirit being love and Spirit being law, love is the divine givingness. It is forever giving, always giving, always giving, always giving. It withholds nothing. It is infinitely abundant. Am I holding this? Am I holding this? How am I catching it? It's up to me to turn and be available to it. It's up to each one of us to turn and be able to it. So this is how we are applying this science of mind, this study of a consciousness. We apply it by looking at what it is, looking at the thing in front of us, choosing whether we want to maintain, sustain it, or whether we are open and available to a new experience. And if we are open and available to a new experience, then we change our thought around that. We shift our thinking, we shift our pattern of thinking, we shift our pattern of belief. And truth known is truth manifest. Truth known is truth manifest. So it has to produce that which we wish to experience based upon our belief, to the degree of our belief. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah. So what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? It's 2019. Today is Epiphany. It's January 6th. Epiphany means to reveal, to manifest. So, what are you waiting for? This is your own epiphany today. It's your own opportunity to take the knowledge and manifest your highest potential. That's what we're talking about over here. We're emboldening each other. We are empowering each other. We are empowering and emboldening ourselves to what? To live our highest potential. What is our highest potential? Our highest potential is good. It can't be anything but good. It has to be good. Because Spirit, consciousness, the divine, whatever you choose to call it, is good. If Spirit knew anything but good, if Spirit knew sin or disease or evil or lack or limitation, then you know what that would mean? That would mean that it would be eternally that way. And it's not eternally that way. It would mean that if Spirit understood or saw evil or was consciously aware of what we call evil, then it would create a duality. There would be another entity just as equal and just as powerful. And then we would have duality rather than one. And in duality, then life can't be sustained and maintained. In this type of duality, they would be forever at war and forever at odds. So where is that? The evil, the sin, the disease, the dysfunction, the lack, the limitation is in we experience that because we are ignorant of who and whose we are and what we are truly. And so when we awaken to who and what we are and we live by that, then everything else falls away. And it's not about assigning blame or shame or guilt or anything like that to what has been. It's not trying to erase what has been. It's not trying to forgive it by saying what happened is okay. What it is an opportunity to stand right here and right now. I am at this point in my life, and I'm going that direction, not that direction. I'm going that direction. I'm going progressively forward. I'm continuing to evolve. So the way I do that is I look forward. And your feet go forward for a reason. They point forward for a reason. Follow my toes that way. Right? And that what's called for is a remembrance, a remembering of who you truly are. And then act upon it. So what I invite you to do this week, what I invite you to do this month is try it. Experiment with it. Experiment with your life. Try it out. And don't give up if it doesn't work right away. Keep trying it out. It's the tool that we have of changing your thought, changing your life, changing your direction, changing your trajectory. Try it. Experiment. That's what science is about. That's what the study of consciousness is about. We have this great tool. We have this opportunity to have all that we could ever imagine and more. So what are you waiting for? Today's your epiphany. Today's your day to manifest. Today is your day to awaken. Today is your day to accept. Today is your day to receive. Open and be available to all the good that is already yours here in 2019. And so it is.